So firewalls, unlike antivirus software, these will detect any sort of traffic going in and out of a computer or a network. So they'll monitor everything coming out. Hence why it's called a firewall. Like it's literally like a line that goes across your network or your computer, and as data flows in and out of it, it'll check it and make sure that what is coming in and out of it is okay. Um, Obviously, it doesn't check absolutely everything. So if a firewall was to check literally every single packet in detail, your internet will be incredibly slow. So it only checks certain things, but obviously you can get it set up so it'll check literally everything. But obviously then that's going to reduce your speed quite a lot. But sometimes it can be a hardware device, depending on what is set up. Sometimes you can have a hardware device that the internet goes through, which acts basically as a firewall. Obviously, you can have it on your computer just as a piece of software. So, depends on what you need it for. But usually, big networks will have a dedicated piece of hardware to do it because obviously it can do it all on its own. Then you're not requiring a computer to run a software to do it. Um, and obviously, there are multiple different ways where it looks at packets and things going in and out of the network to sort of filter and make sure everything's running okay. So, I'm going to go over a few of these now. So you may have seen this before on the right. This is the TCP/IP model. So when you've seen internet packets going in and out of a network, or you've heard of internet packets going in and out of a network, it's composed of these things. So it has 4 layers. Um, the very bottom of the layer is how it's being transported, essentially, up to what is being transported at the top. So network interface is obviously what it's going through. So it could be Ethernet, could be fiber, could be Wi-Fi, anything like that. Network that it's going through, so it could use IP. Obviously, IP addresses is obviously one of the easiest one to use, the IP routing. You could be using ARP instead, so sending through an ARP request, which is looking at different addresses that's on a network, usually from a router. And obviously there's some others as well, but we're not going to go over all of them here. How it's being transported, so TCP and UDP is how the data sort of being packaged. So TCP is usually a common one for doing local networks, and it's usually so many kilobytes or megabytes large each packet. UDP is more for long range, and I'll talk about that another time. And then the application, obviously. So what is being transported? So it could be HTTP, which is obviously a HTML file, so a web page. FTP or FTTP, which is one of the new ones. That's obviously transferring files. Ping and DHCP. You'll probably come across these a lot later, but essentially what you need to know is that each packet has these bits of information in them to say what they're running on, how they're being ran, what they're being encapsulated in, so TCP or UDP, so how big the data size is and stuff, and what's actually inside it, so like HTML file, HTTP or whatever. So a firewall, first off, can do packet filtering, which is obviously looking at the lower layers of the TCP/IP 4-layer model. So basically packet filtering and look at these things at the bottom, so the network and the network interface, and you can block certain things. So potentially you could block ICMP, for example, and if you blocked that, like that's fine. Like it might be that you're only using IP on your network to transfer things from one place to another. So you'd block that, and a firewall will basically be like, oh, it's using ICMP, we can't come through, so it will block this. If it doesn't contain the thing that the firewall's been set up to do, it'll just reject it and get rid of it. Obviously, it's set by a network admin, so your network admin can basically be like, right, this can be let through, this can be let through, this can't, this can, and obviously you set it up as to what you want from it. Application layer filtering is more to do with the top, so you're stopping certain things coming through. So it might be, instead of blocking ICMP and ARP or IP, you block what they have inside them. So it might be that if it's got a HTML file, you block, web pages coming through, or you block file transfers from happening. Depends on what you want to set up. So it basically looks at the top two. So if something, if you wanted to block like email, for example, it'd use TCP and another one that isn't there, which is like POP3, if you've ever heard of that. That's a post office protocol. It might be that you block emails, so it'll block TCP and it'll block POP3. And if emails try and go in and out of the firewall, it'll just say no, it's not part of the firewall that we've set up. So that just blocks the top layers essentially. Network address translation, you've probably heard of this before. So NAT, if you heard of NAT settings, if you ever played on a console, usually sometimes you'll have restricted NAT and you have to open ports and stuff like that. Basically, um, on if you're at home, your network has an address for your house, and obviously you've got IP addresses for each device. So your phone, computer, tablet. If you've got like a personal assistant like Echo or a Alexa or something like that, or even a smart fridge, they'll all have IP addresses because obviously they all got to be on a network. All them will be translated, so each device, like your phone, your tablet, your computer, whatever, will be all summed up into one IP address when it goes off into the internet. So as far as the internet's concerned, your house is just an IP address. It doesn't see the individual IP addresses of each machine. So network address translation is changing it from those individual IP addresses to one IP address. Now, what a firewall will do is make sure that when something's sending a request back to and from the network that the firewall's protecting, it doesn't show the rest of the IP addresses that's on there. So the firewall will get whatever's coming from the internet saying, oh, something's requested this piece of information from us off the internet. We'll send it to this IP address. They can't know what IP address it is on the network. The firewall and routers and stuff will know all that. But obviously, the firewall's got to make sure that no data is being sent out. So if an individual IP address is being trying to get sent out, it will stop, because obviously, if you're a hacker and you were trying to hack somewhere like Microsoft, for example, if you knew the IP address of, say, major servers in there, like individual IP addresses, you could then target them IP addresses and stop them. So if you try and bash on the one IP address that's for the entire company, which there will be one, they'll have a network address translated IP address. Obviously, that's got a hell of a lot of security on it to stop people from being able to hack Microsoft. So that's what firewalls will do. They'll also do network address translation and stop IP addresses from going out, and just use one IP address for the entire network that it's protecting. So that's firewall filtering methods, and what firewalls do. We'll have a quick look in the next video, probably on demilitarized zones and proxies. But that's essentially the most basic sort of things that a firewall will do in order to stop attacks from happening and stop certain things going in and out of the network.